know that you can follow up and understand what they are doing, than digitizing the whole process, Madam Speaker, and you find you can't even see who is the beneficiary, how is the country benefiting, do we find ourselves gaining or losing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we come now to health, and I know the community health workers are all waiting to see. Just the same way we have ensured the interns have gone through, just the same way we are ensuring the JCC teachers, Madam Speaker, our community health workers, and I want us to really focus on this universal health, Madam Speaker, even to look at, even as we move, I know many people are fighting SHIF or NHIF, but it's one thing, Madam Speaker. It is for us to decide and see what is best for any Kenyan as an insurance of health. And Madam Speaker, it's important for us to really get out of waste. Let us look at what we normally say it is waste. And you know, Madam Speaker, waste is that these small things we do without knowing we are wasting. And when you put together their finances, you find that you've really wasted. Madam Speaker, in the education sector, I want to tell parents that you need to look at how the new model of funding of university is. And Madam Speaker, the day the parents will understand each band, how it works, you find that an orphan is 95%, Madam Speaker, supported. And so what she or he will pay is very minimum from the household. But many parents, it's like they are not understanding, Madam Speaker. And you find that in the same education sector, many parents do not look at the portal of their own children. And I want to convince parents, first years and second years, when they follow the model of government, it is fully what you're supposed to pay. For example, if your child has a school fees of 300,000, you find that 70% of that is 210, and therefore the loan takes, and the rest, 15,000, goes to the household. And so parents must know, follow the new model, look at it, get to learn how your child is being sponsored, so that we remain, even with bursary, that can sponsor third years and fourth years. But first years who are joining now and second years, that model is a fantastic model for you to be in university. The students we should be worried about are students going to college, are the ones who we are supposed to get worried. Madam Speaker, you look at how the votes have been done. I just want to go to one vote that we need to also ask ourselves, which is vote D1082, which talks of the state of Department of Medical Services that deals with maternal newborns. I know I've talked about it, but I just want to repeat, Madam Speaker, it is time we also see how can we work with both functions. It is devolved, yes, but at the national level and the devolved level. It is important for us to start strengthening both and to ensure the referral can also work very closely with that is devolved. And therefore, Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support and to thank the committee.
Honorable Member for Busia, Honorable Catherine Omayo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am very happy about this appropriation bill. The range of choices available there has prioritized what matters. For the first time, if we stick to that, Kenya will live within its means for some time, for the sake of development, for the sake of our children in school, and those children who live in ASAL and semi-arid areas, arid areas, and floods, places where we have floods every time frequenting. Children who live around such places hardly go to school, but if we put food, like give the schools that these children could access, if we have some lunch or a program like that, these children will not lack to go to school just like any other child in Kenya. And if everything is put in place again, we will reduce corruption. And with reduction in corruption, many of our school-going children, especially those who come from poor families, will also just attend school like any other children. Then also, people who are living below poverty level, the gap between the rich and the poor will be reduced. This is evident because if actually a few people in Kenya, like 10% that have been controlling the economy of Kenya, will actually not have access to having it all like it has been, then a lot will trickle down to the grassroots people. And if a lot goes to the grassroots people, then that means that many will also have access to basic needs. That is where we all start talking about belonging to a country that takes care of its people or protects its people. So it is a good bill. I support it. I want to see no difference between a child from Siamahanga village, where I come from, and a child in Nairobi. There must be something. Then also the migration between the villages, between the rural areas will reduce, because every county, if possible, every county must have a factory. A lot of money has been getting lost into few people's pockets. But if that money can go now into developing industries in every county, that means younger people who are today up in their arms saying that they need jobs, these jobs will be available. And our economy will start growing. And when the economy grows, that means our people can have some pride in them and count themselves as belonging to this nation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Irene Mayaka.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I stand here to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill of 2024. And the reason why I am doing that, Honorable Speaker, is first because of the obvious austerity measures that are being put in place to ensure that not only do we, as a country, ensure that we are not having spillage of funds, but also that we are ensuring that we are cutting out on expenses that we believe are not exactly necessary right now. Honorable Speaker, I just want to highlight some of the things that are in this particular supplementary that I like. One of them is the fact that we have decided that the GSS interns will have no cut in terms of they will be supported fully, and also for the interns from the medical field. But Honorable Speaker, one of the major concerns that I do have, we live in a country where 78% of our population is youthful. But when you look at the allocations for monies that have been put towards the youth space, it brings a lot of concern. Honorable Speaker, even in this particular parliament, we do not have a department that is specific to youth-related affairs. Youths are treated in this country like a by the way, and we really need to look at how do we change that as a country. Honorable Speaker, I did hear the Chair of Budget speak about the fact that 47 of the sagas have been denied monies, and therefore they are going to be reallocated to the others, so that we are able to also just reduce the duplication that there is in this country. And that, Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with that, because we have too much duplication going on in this country. And we need to find a way where we are able to centralize some of these functions to be able to have them allocated to one particular place. Because, Honorable Speaker, it doesn't make sense when, for example, in terms of national government, you have an auditor for each and every department. Ideally, we should have the audit committee based on one place, so that when we are doing internal audits, then the people who are from this particular audit department will be able to just do audits for all the departments. That happens, Honorable Speaker, in most private sectors. You will never find, for example, in a bank, that a department for trade, a department for retail banking, for wholesale banking, each of them has their own auditor. They only have one audit department that is able to then be distributed as per schedule to all the other areas to be able to work. That is one of the ways that we as a country can be able to save money. Honorable Speaker, I did hear the chair also speak about agriculture and some of the measures that have been put here. And Honorable Speaker, I would really love for some of the people who are engaging the chair to stop engaging him, because he needs to listen to some of these measures that we are putting in place. Honorable Speaker, for example, we are talking about cost cutting. In this day and age in our country, in Kenya, we still have instances where our large-scale farmers are using old traditional agricultural methods. And yet we have countries like even our neighbor in Rwanda that use the drone technology when they're doing crop production and they're doing tests to see whether or not the large-scale farms have issues by drone technology. Why wouldn't we do that in Kenya? Because that would actually enable us to save money. Honorable Speaker, we need to stop being scared of going the technology way, because the technology way in a lot of these departments would be able to enable us to save money. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, for example, if we had really good technological interventions within this country, even in the offices of the MPs, if, for example, like I see in the CS offices where they have the Huawei digital platform where they can be able to have their meetings there, if we did have that, then we'd be able to save so much money. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that we need to speak about in this country is corruption, budgeted corruption, because there's a lot of embezzlement of funds in terms of budgeted corruption. By the time we are asking different departmental committees to give us their budgets, have we been able to actually go back and check against their performance contracts? Were they able to even deliver what was put in their performance contracts? We don't do that. All we do is that we treat this whole country as a cost center. And the reason why I say that, Honorable Speaker, is because you will rarely ever see, when you're having departmental committee meetings with the different ministries in this country, never ever will you see a departmental committee come with a document telling you how they're planning to make revenue, how they're planning to raise revenue. Honorable Speaker, this takes me back to something that the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga really wanted for this country. He once said that as a country, we should have one product per county. What that meant was that every county would be able to focus on a specific product, be very good at it, and actually raise revenue within their own streams from that. Those are some of the austerity measures we should be talking about as a country. We should be talking about, now that we don't have a Finance Bill 2024, and everybody is giving excuses why we cannot do any development because now there's no money, because we are depending on taxes. Why are we not, as a country, thinking of how else to bring up innovations and investments for us to be able to raise money? Must it always be that we are raising money from taxation? I'll give you an example, Honorable Speaker, of the Ghanaian government right now. They have really focused on investment, an investment-driven government, for them to be able to actually raise money from other sources other than taxation. And I think for a country, that's the direction we should be thinking. Honorable Speaker, having said that, I just want to support this particular bill. It's a first of its own where we are reducing expenses. We are taking things in the right direction. But I also just, as I conclude, want to invite us to start thinking outside the box and really start thinking of how we are going to drive the economy of this country from where it is to a better economy, by actually looking at ways in which, as a country, we can begin to raise money on our own. I submit.
Mike. The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, member for Kwanza.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I take on the very onset, my position is that actually this appropriation bill, number 2, 2024, is a very unique one, Madam Speaker, noting that it's come before the bill itself, the financial period 2024-2025. In all sense, I think it's a very unique approach, and it's just because some people were not happy with the bill, and so it was rejected. And my take is that I think in this appropriation bill, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the chairman, who has done a very good job, and I want to say echo to him, because first and foremost, the actually appropriated funds to agriculture and health. In agriculture, I think the thing that actually very impressed me is that first, we're going to have the fertilizer subsidy, which is about 7.5 billion. And I hope and pray that it'll be there on time, so that it can be able to have our farmers access the fertilizer on time. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, the fertilizer is also going to be under hope and pray that the department or the Ministry of Agriculture on the importation of this fertilizer be done on time, so that it can be able to have it ready when the season of planting is there, so that it's there, and at the same time, after planting, we hope and pray, Mr. Speaker, that there will be also top pressing a fertilizer on time. Because this season, I come from Trans Nzoia, and farmers even were coming to me as if I'm in the Ministry of Agriculture, but because I'm in that Committee of Agriculture, and they were asking why the fertilizer was not on time. Secondly, when we finished, the top pressing fertilizer was not even there. So I want to thank the committee for having come up with this, and there is a hope and pray that we'll have fertilizer on time, including, of course, top pressing on time. Secondly, as we go on, the fact that in agriculture, again, you have got money appropriated to import the milk coolers. Mr. Speaker, the milk coolers are very important for our country. First, it will encourage farmers to be able to do dairy farming, which, of course, as you know, we are in a tropical country, and therefore dairy farming is actually very appropriate here. And at one time, I was in the Middle East. Those days when I was working for Kodak, you would go to the Middle East, and when you go for breakfast, you'll get milk from this country. But today, you go there and find that when they serve you, you find milk coming from Uganda. Then when did the rain start beating us? I think the milk coolers that you are having are not just for the sake of it. I think they are going to encourage farmers to do dairy farming and be able to have enough milk for exportation, both milk powder and even in liquid milk to be able to. So this again, you have given some money to be able to import the milk coolers, which I think is very, very important, and I think I want to say congratulations. Then, of course, we have money, which again, that the Minister of Education, again, the Minister of Education has been given money, the feeding program. That encourages, because some areas, Mr. Speaker, you find that children are not even encouraged to go to school because there's nothing in school. They would rather stay at home and drink water than going to school. Maybe some 5, 2 or 3 or 4 or even 3 kilometers away, and there's no feeding program. So again, this supplementary budget, I think, bill, I think, has helped us and has going to encourage our children to go to school and stick to the school, other than going there and running away because there is no food. So the feeding program, I think, is quite good, is very encouraging. And of course, CSS, again, from what the chairman has just read, is that they are going to be paid. So again, there's an encouragement of those who actually have finished training as teachers, and I think will be paid for their services, and that was actually lacking, including, of course, the Minister of Health. Again, that again is something that this supplementary appropriation bill has again taken note and going to be able to pay for that. More important, Mr. Speaker, is that we, when the original bill was cut, people actually made very, very bad remarks. We lost actually electricity because you had been located, I think, 52 million shillings by every constituency for rectification in the rural area. Imagine that gain went, and you have not revived that. I hope and pray that during the year, as we go forward, we'll be able to locate a few coins to be able to have electricity actually in the rural areas, because we had 52 million shillings in every constituency. Again, that was thrown away because the bill was rejected. Same thing with the CDF. I think we also lost some money, but never mind. These cuts, I think, are going to help, because some of them is because, again, Mr. Speaker, it was actually appropriation of some of the funds. You'll find the ministry has 2 or 3 departments, and of course they do the same thing. You find duplication of services, which again is something that I want to say. The cuts that are in the ministry, not for nothing, is because I think the committee looked at some of the departments and ministries are actually a duplication of services, and therefore that again is going to help save some money for doing other important projects and reallocate the funds elsewhere. So, I think the taxations actually that people complained about, I think, have been reduced. And I hope and pray that when we pass this appropriation bill, supplementary bill, we hope nobody can raise his finger complaining that this budget has again been reintroduced after being rejected. And therefore, I think, as far as I'm concerned, this is a very good supplementary budget, appropriation budget, and I hope and the bill is going to see the light of the day at the end of it tomorrow, whatever it is, so I can be able to move forward. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support this supplementary appropriation bill, and I hope and look forward to people actually on both sides supporting it, so they can be able to move forward, more particularly because some of the taxes actually have been cut. I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi. The Honorable Clive Gisairo, the MP for Kitutu Masaba, followed by the Honorable Dr. Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise, first of all, to support the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2, 2024. And I'd like to thank the good work done by the Chair and the members of his committee to try and align with the needs of the people of Kenya. For us to find ourselves here, Honorable Speaker, tells us that it's either we were living beyond our means, or we were just not listening to the common mwananchi. This appropriation bill is just a testament that we can do better. That the little resources we have, we can be able to develop this country, provide jobs for our people, and minimize on borrowing. Honorable Speaker, in this bill, the education sector has made some gains, but there's still some room. And we expect that in the second supplementary, that should come sooner than later, should address some gaps, because in the education sector, we've lost a lot on infrastructure. But reality is, we are a nation struggling with classroom space. Yes, today we are saying, on the positive side, we are going to confirm 46,000 teachers to P&P from internship. But grade 9 is starting in a few months' time. We have a gross shortage of classrooms. Equally, while we confirmed the 46,000, the initial plan had been to confirm 26, leave 20,000 and an internship, and recruit an additional 20,000 to bridge the gap. Now we are only discussing about confirming 46,000, which does not change the total number of teachers in JSS. Therefore, we shall be having a shortfall come January 2025. We therefore need to ensure that in the second supplementary, we have a discussion of bringing on board an additional number of teachers, not less than 20,000. Otherwise, we're going to have a crisis come January 2025.
Honorable Gisero, the chair for the Departmental Committee on Education is not present, but I know he's listening, and our good chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee too, because we are talking of JSS. We have more TTCs, and we have lowered the grade for entry into TCCs by teachers, but the P1 teachers have been forgotten. Many of them are retiring without employment.
Sure.
So I wish you could firm up that point, because you know the heart of the chair of Budget and Appropriations Committees with the nation and with the teachers.
Yes, Speaker. I'm very sure that the chair is taking notes using his phone, because I know he's digital. He's been embracing the Gen Z agenda. Mr. Speaker, when we look at, again, the higher education, we again have challenges there. We've gone around around this country to universities. There is a big disconnect between the people sitting in Nairobi and the student in the university. It's my strong belief that we need to enable the higher education to move around, to get in touch with the reality. But for us to insist that the university student, when they have an issue, they have to travel all the way to Nairobi for their problems to be solved, we are actually making a problem worse for our youth. So we need to properly fund the Higher Education Loans Board, be it administrative and other services required for them to reach the students down there. We appreciate that in this budget, the security has been well taken care of, that our police officers will get a better pay. These are people who provide security to us. These are people who are always on the front line to combat crime and other ills in society. So those are gains done by this committee, the Budget Committee, to ensure that they are taken care of. Honorable Speaker, I'll want to differ slightly on the common assertion coming from some members who've spoken here that repeatedly that CDF lost 30 million. CDF lost 30 million. I would prefer that we look at things more positively. I don't believe CDF lost. These are hard times, and everyone had to take a hit. Mr. Speaker, what we need to be telling Kenyans is the current amount we are getting into constituencies. How much has it done? How prudent can we get to ensure that the little we get delivers more to our people? If we visit the 290 constituencies, can the CDFCs show us that the little they've gotten is of benefit to the people? If it is, let's be more efficient on what we have. Let us not cry of losing, yet it is not a deduction. We anticipated more, but that more now is not there. So we are retaining what we already had. So let us not dampen the mood. We've done well with the resources we've had. We can do better with the very same resources. Mr. Speaker, on the health sector, again, this supplementary budget goes ahead to ensure that the interns are well taken care of, because we need a healthy nation. We need our youth to have jobs. It is painful for any parent to educate a child, only for this child to come and sit outside with a medical degree, clinic officer training, but sitting at home. So this is also to say that the government has taken concern on our health providers and ensuring that they're all taken care of, and we keep absorbing more. Honorable Speaker, we would like to inform that those who will be coming in, the new appointees, because some now happen to come from near where I sit here, we will still be hard on them if the views of the Kenyans are not taken into consideration. This was a starting point to have a progressive country, a country that presents to its people a progressive budget that indicates our ability and us living within our means. Honorable Speaker, electrification is a challenge, and we hope that in the next supplementary budget, rural electrification gets more funding. And lastly, Honorable Speaker, we are still wasting money on state departments that can be merged. We need to look into areas that can be consolidated to save taxpayers money. I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support this supplementary appropriation bill number 2. Thank you.
Dr. Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me also stand and make my few comments on the Supplementary Appropriation Bill 2024. Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves in uncharted waters, unprecedented situation that we find ourselves in. This is the first time probably in Kenya, and could be in many parts in this world, where a supplementary budget is prepared before you even implement the main budget. And Honorable Speaker, we find ourselves in this situation simply because we refuse to listen to the people of Kenya. We find ourselves in this situation because we refused to govern for the benefit of the people of Kenya. There were signs all along that things were not well. Yet we remained adamant, believing that we have the power of the barrel, we have the power of the gun. We will beat everybody into submission and get ourselves here. Honorable Speaker, naturally, we have to approve or second the supplementary bill to enable the country to move on. Otherwise, without it, then the government will shut and everything will come to an end. And it's the rural people, it's the Kenyan population that will suffer. But Honorable Speaker, we support the bill, knowing very well that this is going to slow down the economy. We support the bill, knowing very well that this bill is going to lead Kenya into a terrible recession. We support this bill, knowing very well the little gains that we ever made, starting from the day of President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, are going to be rolled back drastically. Honorable Speaker, in a country, in a third world country like Kenya, where the government plays an important role in the locomotion of the economy, when the government is not spending, there is no economy. There's nothing that will grow. And that's why, Honorable Speaker, if you read various commentaries, be it by World Bank, EFD, IMF, they have a very glim view, a very negative view on the economic growth of this country in this calendar year, simply because they see there's no possibility of any economic impetus that will allow the economy to move. Honorable Speaker, when you look at this document, this supplementary, it is all about cuts, 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 and cuts. The most interesting thing, Honorable Speaker, and this, we need to ask ourselves very hard questions as a country. Honorable Speaker, there are serious cuts in development. So the obvious question many of us are asking, and Kenyans are asking, does it mean the staff employed in these state departments, in these sagas, in these MDS, will simply be walking to the office, sit, read newspapers, go to the social media, and do nothing? Because without any development funds, Honorable Speaker, what do you do with the engineers that the chair of the Budget Appropriation Committee has talked about harmonizing them? What do you do with them? What do you do with the water engineers, Honorable Speaker, if you cut an entire, about several billions in the water harvesting program? So what do the civil engineers in the Ministry of Water do? Do they simply sit there, go to social media? What do you want them to do, Honorable Speaker? Because, Honorable Speaker, you cut 2-point-something billion on technical, vocational education and training. Yet, Honorable Speaker, the hallmark of Vision 2030, MTP3 and MTP4, was to equip Kenyans with skills to ensure that they participate in the manufacturing sector. Honorable Speaker, so what are we going to do to achieve the target of 15% GDP contribution from manufacturing if we do not invest in skills acquisition, Honorable Speaker? Are we really serious in what we do, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, I would go on and on, but Honorable Speaker, the massive cuts, Honorable Speaker, in the education sector means, therefore, even the school infrastructure is not going to be there. We're not going to have money for school infrastructure. Yet by 2026, Honorable Speaker, we are expected to transition to the new education system as they move into the senior secondary. Even by next year, Honorable Speaker, many schools in rural Kenya do not have classrooms. for grade 9. What are we going to do to house these boys and girls who are so fired up and energetic enough, they want to go to school, Honorable Speaker? What are we going to do? Even when you go to recurrent sector, I want to spend a little more time in education. You find that a whopping 10 billion, Honorable Speaker, has been taken away from teacher resource management. Therefore, it means the so-called retooling, retraining the existing teachers towards to enable them handle secondary school, senior secondary school, be it STEM or these various pathways, Honorable Speaker, is no longer going to be there. So we are going to limp through. We'll get teachers who are ill-trained, who are ill-prepared, Honorable Speaker, to manage the affairs of that particular category. Honorable Speaker, it is indeed a sad event. Honorable Speaker, many of us wonder, recurrent expenditure again, secondary education, 5 billion chopped off. Is it capitation? Is it quality assurance? What are we talking about? Primary education, again, Honorable Speaker, another 1.9 billion chopped, reduced. So if we can't invest in education, Honorable Speaker, are we killing these generations permanently, or what are we doing? Honorable Speaker, as I say, many times I've never supported supplementary, but I just want to appeal to the Chair of Budget and Appropriation Committee. If there is going to be any change of fortune in terms of the projected revenue, if we are going to achieve that revenue, we must go back and revisit this particular appropriation bill. We must go back, Honorable Speaker, and revisit the bill, the act, completely. Because as it is now, we are literally grounding the government to halt. We are grounding the entire economy. We are putting the entire economy to a standstill, Honorable Speaker. We will be unable to do anything. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, and this probably when the chair of the Budget Appropriation Committee is responding, I have my tribulations. National administration, we have a cut of 6.6 billion on the general administration and support services. We need to know what has been reduced. Is it salaries to buy equipment? Is it salary to support general operations of the national administration system? And if that's the case, how does it relate to security and security situation now that we're not going to create jobs? And if we don't create jobs, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, we must also understand what's the purpose of passing an appropriation bill, yet the Treasury does not disburse the money. When you see the departmental committees, the PSS and the state corporation continuously lament that 30 to 40% of what is appropriated is never disbursed. We are running a broken system. As we support, we must go on record, we are running a rudderless and a broken system, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Undo. The Honorable Cynthia Muge, attending to some state duties. The Honorable Charles Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance and opportunity to want my voice on this important, unique, and in fact, has ever been witnessed. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Budget and Appropriation Committee, of course, for the work they have done. This year, they have had to contend with doing 2 appropriations bill in a span of less than 4 months because of the historical happening we witnessed recently in our constituency during these Gen Z activities, Mr. Speaker. Let me support it, but with a lot of reservation, Mr. Speaker. Number one, JSS education sector has won by confirming our interns. But Mr. Speaker, if you look at the primary schools, we have got over 300,000 trained primary school teachers who we have totally forgotten as far as employment in the education sector is concerned, Mr. Speaker. Where are we condemning these 300,000 P1 trained teachers, Mr. Speaker? That is an aspect we need to look very carefully, Mr. Speaker, going forward. The other issue in the education sector, while we appreciate the CDF is remaining constant, and let us stop misleading this House, CDF is going to remain the way it was since the last financial year, Mr. Speaker. I would like us to focus on the issue of infrastructure in our technical institutes, in our universities, in our primary schools, in our secondary schools, Mr. Speaker. Now the sector has hugely been affected, and we are going to witness what we call crisis in the education sector because of the 5 billion budget cut, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of agriculture, that is okay. We need to give our farmers fertilizer so that the productivity in that economic activity can actually be improved. And the issues of course, Kenya coffee farmers getting more funds will be good. The issue of milk production, Mr. Speaker, which is an essential community in our community, Mr. Speaker, is going to benefit on that. Then, of course, another winning sector is the security. The police officers will be rewarded by salary increment, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, based on the unfolding in our country, I suggest our president, even the budget and appropriation committee, the housing levy we are now paying. Why can't we take this money first to go to police officers, make them good housing units instead of actually going commercial way? Let us invest this money, first of all, in improving the public houses we give our civil servants, Mr. Speaker. Then we can generate into economic activities, Mr. Speaker, we are going to witness. Of course, the budget of school feeding program has been retained, but this should be universal. Children are being discriminated, especially the areas which are regarded as not marginalized. Like my constituency, I don't have an existing feeding program. We need to feed our students and our pupils all over the country without discriminating them, whether you are coming from a livestock or another community, Mr. Speaker. So I think going forward, the next financial year, we need to put what we call feeding program in all our primary and secondary, especially primary schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, now, the country doesn't need austerity measures. What country needs is economic stimulus, Mr. Speaker. When the government is not spending, there is no economic growth, Mr. Speaker. When we are witnessing the rising issues of interest rates going up instead of going down, the economy is not going to recover. When we are experiencing political instability, there's nothing, Mr. Speaker, we are doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I suggest, while it is appropriate to put austerity measures, we need to form a task force that is going to oversight what we call economic stimulation program, Mr. Speaker, for our country to be able to grow economically, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget chair has stated that 47 sanghas are going to be dissolved. And these sanghas were actually merged or dissolved, wherever the technical term you are going to use. These sanghas most of them were formed by the Parliament Act. I would like to request we exercise this issue carefully before dissolving some of these sagas. We need to sit down and discuss in a holistically view whether we need them. But we cannot just wait one committee or one person to decide whether a saga is good for us or it is bad for us, Mr. Speaker. The law has to be followed because majority of them were established by the Act of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issues of revenue collection needs to be relooked in our economy. I am sure whatever we are taxing Kenyans is sufficient to support growth, especially in our electricity sector, which has been adversely affected. Each of the constituencies could have gotten 50 million, but still, the money we are paying as taxes, we can afford to give each and every constituency, each and every Kenyan, each and every institution set up by the parliament, we can give electricity, and which is a basic thing, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I support, and I still insist, let us relook into supplementary 2 and reinstate these funds for electricity. Every Kenyan is entitled to have electricity, water, and food. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, the MP for Kitui Central.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also stand to support this. And as a member of the Budget Committee, let me make these two statements, opening statements, just to put the record straight in terms of what Honorable Oundo and part of what Honorable Sienen has said. Honorable Speaker, if you want to get the details of the budget in terms of itemized details, the Budget and Appropriation Committee did a report which was discussed last week. So that's why you find the details in terms of the changes which have been summarized into this bill. The second point, Honorable Speaker, the fact that we are proposing some changes to the parastatals or these sagas does not mean that we will not use the law. I want to remind honorable members that, honorable members, you did pass a law called Privatization Act. And that act stipulates very clearly what needs to be done before a parastatal or a saga is either privatized or merged with another one. So the law is very clear, it will be followed. My comments on this supplementary bill, Honorable Speaker, are as follows. Last week we did discuss the budget appropriation report. Last week we also went through a committee of supply, which was a committee of the whole house. And this is just a summary of the things we discussed last week. So in short, Honorable Speaker, you will not find anything new in this bill, which was not captured in those other reports. But I want to pick 3 items which I think are important for Kenyans. One of them, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans need to note that the whole issue of GSS teachers who have been complaining that they are still on a temporary arrangement and they want to be permanent and pensionable, Honorable Speaker. Resources for that, the chair has confirmed we have those resources. So we want to encourage them that once this supplementary bill becomes an act of parliament, they should be able to be employed permanent and pensionable. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which is critical is the issue of indans also in the Ministry of Health. Honorable Speaker, there has been a lot of lobbying from these indans that we need to factor in resources to have them employed also. In this supplementary bill, Honorable Speaker, there's a provision of 3.8 billion, which is expected to go towards that direction to ensure that these indans and the Ministry of Health are also employed, Honorable Speaker, on a permanent basis. So I thought it's important I say that. The other matter which is critical, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of A in A. Honorable Speaker, after we made a decision to scale down the budget because of the issues of the withdrawal of the finance bill, a lot of institutions have come up with proposals to have their ceiling for A in A improved or raised, Honorable Speaker. And what that means, Honorable Speaker, is that the whole area of A in A, in terms of the way we generate our resources, requires to be thoroughly checked so that we know what is the potential for each MDA so that we don't have areas where they collect more than they are reporting. In that case, we have what we call underreporting, because it is very dangerous, Honorable Speaker. What it means is they will have more resources as compared to what we have appropriated for them. And that leads to either unnecessary expenditure or expenditure which is not controlled by Treasury. But, Honorable Speaker, three observations which I think is important as we move to the future. One of them, Honorable Speaker, is if you look at this supplementary bill, a lot of money has been reduced on development budget. And that's why I want to agree with Honorable CNN. Honorable Speaker, if we are not able to carry out economic activities in this country through development budget, then we cannot talk about economic growth. If we can't talk about economic growth, Honorable Speaker, it means issues of employment creation and all that. So this is an area, Honorable Speaker, we need to consider as a House, as we move through the future, how can we ensure that we have more money for development as opposed to more money for recurrent? In that case, we'll be helping the economy. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which is critical, is the issue of budget deficits. I realized initially when we started discussing this, we were saying we'll be borrowing about 141 billion, Honorable Speaker. From this bill, this figure has moved up to 170 billion. What it says, Honorable Speaker, is that our appetite for borrowing still continues to be there, Honorable Speaker. And we have said very many times, this area of public debt is an area we really, seriously as a country, need to discuss and agree on a way forward. For example, the budget deficit has now moved from 3.8 to 4.3%. And it is obvious, Honorable Speaker, it is very difficult to develop a country through borrowing. I think time has come when we must look at our public debt and say, what do we want as Kenyans? I think Kenyans out there, they have told us that borrow less, see whether we can use our own resources. And what Kenyans have said, since they have said they don't want to be taxed more, what it means, Honorable Speaker, is can we look at our expenditure items and come up with a good prioritization of the expenditure items so that at the end of the day, Honorable Speaker, we only fund what is very key or what is very core for this country. And in that case, we'll be growing the economy, and Honorable Speaker will be helping this country. So as I conclude, Honorable Speaker, because those are the only things I wanted to say, our colleague and friend, Honorable Bandi, who we've worked together on these matters of budget for a long time, is the man who is supposed now to be dealing with this budget, Honorable Speaker. And I can tell you, Honorable Speaker, it is not going to be easy. So I just want to say, we wish him well. He has been having very good ideas together with me. Now he has the opportunity to implement what we have been saying should be implemented. I will be still reminding him what we have been saying every day so that we help this country move to the next level. What I want to appreciate most is now that we agree this side of this divide of the House has some brains which can help this country. We want now to make sure that we use this brain called Bandi so that we move Kenya to the next level. I'm convinced he has what it takes to move Kenya to the next level, but he has to implement what we have been discussing with him. For him to implement that, Honorable Speaker, he will require the political goodwill from the highest office. So I want to plead the highest office to provide that political goodwill. Because if it is not there, Honorable Speaker, we'll be going back to where we have always been. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Makali Mulu, before you, because you have some 1 or 2 minutes, you know you are a long-serving member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and thank you for the compliments to our colleague, the Honorable John Badi. But Honorable Makali, informed the House something at page 910. This line R2044, now that you are in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, you see the last item there?
Yeah, last item is...
this Senate legislation and oversight, is it inclusive of that thing called Senate Oversight Fund, or it excludes it?
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the detailed report, we did agree that there was some money for Senate oversight. So this figure includes part of that money. But what we said as a committee, and it is probably documented, is that there should be a very clear framework on how this resource will be utilized. So that by having this framework, we'll also ensure that there is also accountability for the same resources. So in the past, they have used the money as part of the normal office operations. This time we are insisting there must be a very clear framework on how the resources will be used. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah, so you are saying that fund that was being created is not there?
No, the money is there because, it was not a separate fund. What they did is just to budget as part of the normal Senate resources. But we are saying now we need a very clear framework so that when the money is used by the senators, issues of accountability are not overlooked. That is the position of the Speaker.
And so the senators will be paid salary for legislation and oversight, and they'll also have a Senate oversight fund. Do you confirm that?
Yeah, okay, that should be the position.
Thank you. The Honorable Joanna Ngeno for purposes of balance, followed by the Honorable Francis Sige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this particular opportunity to delve into this supplementary budget appropriation bill, number 2 of 2024. Speaker, we all understand that the bill, the process that we are handling today is a process which has gone through, I think it is the first budgetary appropriation that has gone through a lot of turmoil and feelings and of course pains based on some of the cuts, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to also weigh in, and first I want to say that I support in totality, despite the many challenges that are going to accompany this particular appropriation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget we had done previously was one of the most expensive budget, and of course we all understand that the only avenues we had so that that budget could go through was of course through funding by our own selves, and that is by taxing the people of this country. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the rest of what happened is just history. What I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to thank the chairman and the committee for the support they gave to the particular departmental committees on their particular presentations they made, and of course, the aligning of several needs by several departments and of course, the needs of the country. Speaker, I want to state categorically that our Department for Housing, the Speaker, although there were some few adjustments on some of the allocations, we still believe that what has been passed, Mr. Speaker, will be enough to run the State Department and, of course, to do the affordable housing and institutional housings and, of course, hostels and the rest of the other infrastructural activities that are within that particular budgetary proposal. Mr. Speaker, we also believe that although there are so many cuts which were done on other areas, Mr. Speaker, we believe that when the economy of the country rises to the level that we can comfortably allocate money to various activities, then, Mr. Speaker, I think there is a time that we can have some of the activities which has been budgeted, appropriated correctly. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank also the, which of course most of the members here have talked about, the fact that we'll be confirming the 46 or 45,000 JSS teachers. This was a relief, Mr. Speaker, but of course you understand that confirming the 45 does not mean that we are now employing a new ones. We still have the deficit that we always run. When you go to most of the schools, Mr. Speaker, especially the JSS, you'll realize that in every class we have maybe 2 or 3 teachers. And these are the teachers who are going to be teaching or who are teaching more than 10 subjects. So you can imagine how strained most of our schools are. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy to note that among the issues which were added, Mr. Speaker, is a salary to the police. The police, Mr. Speaker, have been having, I think it is one of the areas where part of the, it is part of the area where it has never had an increment of salaries for quite some times. And I think this has contributed mostly to the issues that we normally have on the sector, because of the insecurities and of course also the laxity among us members of that particular sector, the corruption that is witnessed left, right, and center in most of the areas, Mr. Speaker. I think the increment of these salaries, Mr. Speaker, will go a long way to motivate our policemen so that they can actually do their work as is required. Mr. Speaker, there are also so many other things, Mr. Speaker, but my greatest elation, Mr. Speaker, is the reduction on areas where we think there has been a lot of wastages. Mr. Speaker, I've once said, Mr. Speaker, that if we really care about this country, and especially the fact that we cannot be collecting taxes from Kenyans painfully and spend them recklessly on the other side, Mr. Speaker, I've always said that let us collect money, let us collect taxes from our people, but let us also use the taxes that we are collecting from our people prudently so that the pain people go through while they are giving out those monies, Mr. Speaker, is commensurate to the work that is being done by the money that is collected. And I once said, and most of the members even of this House, Mr. Speaker, condemned me. I said, these unnecessary travels, both by this House, both by all the houses, both the Senate and the county assemblies, governors, even the members of the executive, Mr. Speaker, we reduce these travels. We can get a lot of money that can go towards development instead of what is normally utilized for. Mr. Speaker, if you look at some of the areas, like, for example, travels and hospitalities, how much money are we spending on hospitalities, Mr. Speaker? So that when you go to most of these offices, there are so many expensive things which are bought in those offices, and that has nothing to do with the delivery of services. Mr. Speaker, those are things which I would wish every now and then the committee that is concerned with the budget proposals and of course appropriation should look into and ensure that you cut completely all those areas where wastages normally occur. Mr. Speaker, look at the number of vehicles. I'm one of those proponents, Mr. Speaker, who I always thank the great president of this country, who is the third, I think it was the third president, Mheshimiwa Kibaki, for the austerity measures he actually introduced in the government, Mr. Speaker. I remember before he took office, most of the cabinet secretaries, PSS, and everybody else who was working with it, even the CEOs, were driving luxurious vehicles, fuel guzzlers, but the president introduced the use of small vehicles. And Mr. Speaker, I think this is something also that the current president should take into consideration so that whatever wastage that we have in terms of vehicles, one vehicle is enough for whatever travels. One vehicle is enough for a cabinet secretary. One vehicle is enough for a PS, and not all these big vehicles, because where these people are traveling between their homes and the offices is there a short distance, Mr. Speaker. So I think those are the areas that we can use austerity measures to reduce the cost and the wastage that we are spending on those particular areas. Mr. Speaker, look at the counties, Mr. Speaker, how much they are spending their monies. Mr. Speaker, every year we are sending over 350 billion to counties, Mr. Speaker. But when you go and try and search for development that has been done by these monies, Mr. Speaker, most of the money that is sent to every county, Mr. Speaker, 80% goes for luxuries and all those that we call, all that we call maybe salaries, goes for travels, goes for expenditures in those recurrent expenditures, Mr. Speaker, so that you will only get around 20% going for development. Mr. Speaker, every year we are training this country to collect taxes. Every year those monies are sent to the counties. Every year those monies that are sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, are spent recklessly on matters that does not bring anything to the table on the citizens that we are taxing. Mr. Speaker, I also wish, Mr. Speaker, I don't know what kind of amendment should be brought, Mr. Speaker, towards this allocation that is going towards counties, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the way sometimes some of the CDF expenditures are done, Mr. Speaker, around 90% goes for development, pure development. 10% only goes for recurrent and administration. Mr. Speaker, I wish we bring an amendment, and I wish the Senate should bring an amendment to the Counties Act, Mr. Speaker, so that whatever money is sent to the counties, Mr. Speaker, 80% should go for development. Only 20% should go for recurrent expenditure. Mr. Speaker, if we were to do that, every village, every ward, every constituency in this country, Mr. Speaker, will feel the development of this country. But if things remain the way it is right now, Mr. Speaker, I don't think there is going to be any meaningful development in the country on site. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, we must also, as a House, ensure that whatever we budget, the appropriation that we do to this, in this House, Mr. Speaker, goes towards real development, roads, electricity, water, and of course, the bursaries, Mr. Speaker. When you look at how much we are appropriating every year in this House, Mr. Speaker, and then you go to the village and find there are no roads. Mr. Speaker, I think it is high time also we ensure that we ring fence some of the allocations towards roads in the
Chairman, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me those 2 minutes. You see, Mr. Speaker, if we do what we call equity in the budget appropriation, budget making process, Mr. Speaker, if this country, if we allocate 2.5 billion to every constituency in this country, Mr. Speaker, towards low volume 10-kilometer roads, that money goes only to 145 billion. Mr. Speaker, if we allocate 72 billion, which will be something like 250 million in every constituency, Mr. Speaker, towards water, every village in this country, Mr. Speaker, will feel that there is money being allocated, Mr. Speaker. That is only 72 billion. If you allocate 100 million in every constituency, Mr. Speaker, towards electricity, every village, every household, every school, every center, Mr. Speaker, will feel electricity. And it is only 100 million. That goes to 29 billion in the whole budget, Mr. Speaker. If you overturn the budget that we normally, I mean the bursaries that we normally allocate in CDF, we allocate as counties, you allocate as the national government, the presidential bursaries. Mr. Speaker, if all those monies are collected, it adds to 70 billion. If that money is sent to secondary schools, Mr. Speaker, secondary school education will be free. You will pay nothing. So, Mr. Speaker, when you add all this, the money to roads, to every constituency, the money for water in every constituency, the money for electricity in every constituency, bursaries to every secondary school, Mr. Speaker, that is only 316 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. How much are we appropriating today? 3 trillion, 4 trillion. But when you go to the village, there's no road. You go to the village, there's no water. You go to the village, there is no electricity. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is high time as this House also we look at how we do our budgets so that we can ring-fence the allocation to the real issues that we have in our villages. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, on the Hazala Fund. Hazala Fund was one of the the best introduction to our economy by His Excellency the President. But you see, Mr. Speaker, it has not been felt correctly in the ground. It is actually behaving like the Fuliza that we used to have in our systems. Mr. Speaker, if you divide the 50 billion that we allocate to Hazala Fund among us 290 constituencies, every constituency will go with 172 million. 172 million, Mr. Speaker. If the groups, or if it is injected in the usual ways of fund, we will have several groups in our villages, Mr. Speaker, especially youth groups, women groups, getting this money, and this money will be properly in circulation, and people would have felt it. Unlike what we have now. People have borrowed these like Fuliza, and they have disappeared. Some of them have just thrown away their SIM cards, and they are not paying back. So, Mr. Speaker, I think also this House has to take up the role of appropriating the Hustler Fund to be taken directly to the constituency so that youths and women can form groups and get empowered through this money. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I thank this House, and I support.
Thank you, Chairman. The Honorable Commissioner Ambassador Francis Sigei, MP for Sotik.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also support this bill. Mr. Speaker, on the onset, I would like to say that this is a very progressive bill, and I want to thank the chairman of the Budget and Appropriation Committee for this wonderful job they have done. And more importantly, Chairman, for the